Yo, what's up, guys? We're back for another breakdown of predictions video. So hit that like button, put a comment down below, and let's get right into it. First fight of the night, Modestas Bukauskas. He's taking on Raffael Cerqueira here, and two guys that aren't really the greatest. Obviously, it's the first fight kicking off the card, but I gotta lean pretty heavily towards Modestas, and I agree with the line. I mean, I feel like Modestas, he's picking up a little momentum in the second UFC stint. He's won 3 out of 4. You see him out there training with Tom Aspinall, and he's fighting someone that's 11-1, but 0-1 in the UFC. And his first UFC fight, he really just went out there and got steamrolled. And it was hard to find a lot of his fights before his debut, but since then, they put a few more online that I was able to find. And I just wasn't super impressed. I mean, he looks pretty mobile, but he doesn't use feints that well and tends to only move in and out, straight forward, straight back. Mostly a kicker. He doesn't really look like he has great boxing at all. And I've seen him pull back with his chin in the air, and I've also seen him do that same thing that he did against Aslan in other fights where if you back him up against the fence, he'll just shell up and kind of absorb punches on his guard. And obviously at the UFC level, people are just going to keep punching until you're knocked out if you do that. And we saw Ebo do that. And he has gotten some creative finishes like spinning back elbows, and he'll throw some spinning back kicks. So it seems like he's like not the best striker, but if you let him sit at range for long enough, he can maybe find like a crazy shot that puts you out cold. But if you really blitz him and make it a fight, seems like he'll kind of wilt. And he has a few submission wins, but I've never really seen him initiate wrestling. And usually you have to try to take him down, you reverse you, put you on your back. And the guys that he's out grappled, I just wasn't impressed with them overall, the way that they looked. So I don't think he's just going to be an easy takedown, but he isn't someone that's a threatening grappler, and I think his conditioning is very in the air as well. He doesn't have very many grueling fights. For Modestas, long-range striking, angle cutting with the jab, using his footwork, check hooks, counter crosses. He could switch stance, good kicks, and he has good conditioning. He can move around and do that for 3 rounds. But with him, he has been finished a few times, so his durability isn't the greatest. So if Cerqueira can land something crazy, there is potential that Modestas gets stopped. But I think he's the better striker. And recently, he's actually looked like he's gotten a lot better with his grappling. He's used to have some problems with guys taking him down, but this one I think he should be the better wrestler. And I could see him getting some clinch control time. His last fight, he got takedowns in the submission in the third. So I think he's improving, getting better. And unless Modestas just gets caught with a, meme-like crazy KO shot, I think he's just going to be better here. He is going to wear down Cerqueira and finish him. I think, I just don't think it'll be quite as quick as we saw Aslan do, but I ultimately think the same result is going to happen with Modestas getting a finish on Cerqueira. So I'm going to say round 2 KO TKO for Modestas Bukauskas here. And this next fight, we got a short notice matchup between Mansur Abdul-Malik and Nick Klein. And Malik, he kept his perfect record intact in his UFC debut. It was last November where he won a fight and the fight of the night bonus to go with it. So got a nice little payday there to kick off his UFC career. 27 years old, he's super athletic, knockout power. He is a former amateur wrestler, so he has a good pedigree there. And originally, he was going to fight Antonio Tricoli, but that fight ended up not happening, so Nick Klein is stepping up on short notice. And Nick Klein is clearly the B-side in this matchup. He's not a hype prospect, but he did come into the Contender Series as the underdog and won in 37 seconds, so he has been known to come in and get upsets, and that win got him the contract. And now he's kind of going to have to prove his UFC level, because that last fight we didn't see much with how quick it went. But Klein is 6-1, so he's not undefeated, but 6-1 versus 7-0, pretty similar records there. And he's the underdog, but he has 4 finishes in under 1 minute. So you have to respect what he's bringing, and putting these two guys together where they have finished 10 of their 14 fights in the first round between each other, you know that's going to be an explosive matchup. And you look at Nick Klein, he actually has some dangerous stand-up, if he can go forward. His distance control is good. He'll use his jab to draw at offense and can land some decent pull counters, leg kicks. But he isn't the fastest fighter, and seems like he's not good fighting going backwards. You can come over the top of his jab when he's throwing it off the back foot and land heavily on him. And I just don't really rate his stand-up that highly. I feel like he's not the most dangerous. He doesn't feint either. And he only counters when he's moving forward, it seems like. So when you back him up, he's just going to look to shoot double legs, which if you could stuff, you could start to land heavier on him and make him more desperate. And he is durable. I mean, I've seen him go into survival mode and be able to last multiple rounds getting dominated. But when he can get takedowns and be more the bully, that's where he can win fights that get extended. Usually he's winning these fights real quick, but I have seen him out-wrestle Colin Huckbody, and he finished him in round 3. But this fight, man, is just... he's a front-runner type of guy that has to be able to dominate or finish you early. And with Mansur Abdul-Malik, he's not going to be able to take this guy down. And on the feet, Malik has long arms, great pressure, way faster, good hand speed. He'll throw nice blitz attacks, nice straight punches, good kicks. And he uses that downhill style to get takedowns. And I just feel like he's going to control the center, be able to pressure without the fear of being taken down. It's unlikely he gets submitted, in my opinion, and I think he has the better conditioning as well. I feel like he has the ability to get a finish in any round, whereas Klein is more first round or bust, but I still think that Abdul-Malik is probably going to continue the trend that both these guys have set in their careers and get an early finish. So mid to late first round knockout is my prediction here for Abdul-Malik. Mansur, he beat Nick Klein's teammate on the Contender Series, Wes Schultz, and Wes Schultz is a bigger guy with, I think, a little bit better experience and better grappling. So I think Mansur is going to be able to take this guy out even a little bit quicker and get this victory. So give me Mansur Abdul-Malik to get the win in this fight. Man, in this next fight, we got an intriguing one. We got one that I'm going back and forth on this one. And I'm a little surprised where it's placed on the card, man. I mean, Ricky Simón, local to the area, you'd think that this would be one of the marquee fights on the card. But both these guys kind of been losing lately. They don't have the most fan-friendly styles, so I get it in a way. But still, I mean, it is kind of buried. But, man, it's two fighters, like I said, that haven't been doing the greatest recently. Ricky Simón, he was looking like a dark horse at 135. He had gotten those finishes against Raffael, against Jack Shore, and he actually went into his fights against Yadong and Mario Batista, who are both now in the top 10 as the favorite. Even his last fight versus Vinicius Oliveira, he was a minus 260 favorite going into that fight. So it is intriguing now to see him as a plus 260 underdog against Javid Basharat. So that kind of just shows how much luster that 3-fight losing skid has taken off of Simón's name. But I am surprised the line is so wide because Javid Basharat is also coming off his first career loss. He hasn't fought in a while, and he hasn't won a fight in more than 2 years. His last 2 fights have been a loss and a no contest, and he hasn't been fighting the top 10s of the world either. So for Simón, it's a drop down in competition, and it's probably a step up, or at least equal level competition for Basharat at a minimum. And both these guys aren't super old, with Simón being the older fighter at 32 to Basharat's 29. But, Simón is young enough where if he comes in locked in, healthy, motivated, fighting in his hometown, he's going to still look good here and be a viable fighter. It's not like he's completely washed up, but I think this fight's very likely going to be a competitive decision. I don't see a huge finishing threat from either fighter. On the feet, Ricky Simón hits harder, but he isn't anything special, and I think he's going to struggle to find clean punches on Javid. Javid is long-rangey, pretty evasive. He throws a lot of touching kicks, straight punches, but it doesn't seem like he throws with any venom a lot of the time. He doesn't have a lot of power, And if Ricky Simón just walks through those shots and throws over the top, how we saw Amin Zahabi do, I don't know if Javid is going to be able to take him down. And at that point, it's going to become a very competitive fight. And Javid is active, slick. He's evasive. He is a little hittable, but coming off that first loss, you think that maybe he's going to come in here and have a couple things fixed up. And both these guys have been pretty dominant in the wrestling department throughout their careers, especially in their wins. High volume takedown style guys where they aren't the best controlling, but they could just take you down over and over. I'd say Basharat has the much better submission threat, but both fighters have good front chokes. I mean, Ricky Simón choked out Merab Dvalishvili, but I feel like Ricky needs to take risks here, throw heavy shots, and try to just make it a brawl, because he's not going to be able to match the volume or technical ability here, and he doesn't have the same weapons at range that Basharat has. But I see it being a really close decision. Ultimately, I'm going to lean with Basharat as the pick, because I feel like he has slightly better volume and stand-up, but I feel like Ricky's getting disrespected on the line. I don't see how someone can be an over 3-1 favorite on Ricky Simón after just losing to Amin Zahabi. I feel like he's going to squeak out a close decision, Basharat, but all the value is on Ricky Simón here. And if he's looking good during the week, I like his vibe. He looks good at the weigh-in. Maybe I will sprinkle a little money on Ricky, because I think that there's definitely value there. He's fighting at home, and this is a good matchup here. And this next fight here, we got a short notice matchup between Nursulton Ruziboev and Eric McConico here. And I'm not exactly sure how this fight got set up, because to my knowledge, I don't think Nursulton Ruziboev even had a fight scheduled, but the UFC Seattle card has kind of been falling apart recently, so maybe when Ruziboev's brother got that call to fight Jared Gordon, they also asked if McConico and him would fight, because McConico is fighting on Tough Enough that same, I believe, Friday before the fights this past Saturday, and he's one of Jared Cannonier's main training partners. He actually cornered Jared Cannonier in that fight that he just won on Saturday, so I'm assuming that maybe they set that fight up like that, like this card was a little low on fights, and they were able to get it done in that way. So it's, I think, favors McConico unless Nursulton has been training, because McConico is getting ready to fight in a Tough Enough 5-round main event against Buddy Wallace, who's actually a really hard guy to fight on the regional scene. So he's going to be in shape and probably really ready to go, because that was also his opportunity to win and get a Contender Series shot or UFC shot. But now, hey man, he bypassed all that. He got right in the UFC, and 34 years old already. So even though he hasn't had a ton of mileage as far as MMA career goes, he has to get going quick, and it's going to have to be through Ruziboev, who came into the UFC, got 2 quick knockouts, looked really good, and then we saw his last fight with Joaquin Buckley, stepped up, took that tough fight early on in your career against a guy that's ranked in the top 10 now, and it was a competitive fight actually, but Ruziboev just got outpositioned and controlled for enough of the fight that it was a clear win for Buckley. But it's been a while since we've seen Ruziboev fight. He was booked to fight Hinat Fakhretdinov in October, but he had to pull out of that fight, so it's been 9 months since we've seen him. And he's one of these guys that I could see, making big improvements now that he's training in Philadelphia. And I feel like with this size, he's difficult for anybody. But I'm a fan of what Eric McConico brings. So I think it's going to be a good matchup here. And style-wise, Eric McConico, he's tested himself against good competition. He trains with the MMA lab. So I think he's going to be ready for this moment. He hasn't lost a fight in over 5 years. Hasn't been the most active, but he's on a 5-fight winning streak. And one thing, though, that he's never seen is someone nearly as tall as Ruziboev across from him, so that's going to be a little bit unique. But McConico, his last loss, he did fight someone with an 81.5-inch reach, so that makes me a little worried, but he's a pressure fighter, and I think he's going to be able to get on the inside. He'll throw really nasty kicks on the feet, really big, powerful legs, but this fight, I feel like he needs to throw more punches in this one, get in the pocket. It's going to be hard to throw kicks against such a tall guy. And you could tell he's a really sturdy, durable fighter. So I think he can eat some shots to get on the inside and make it more of a rough and tumble fight where I think he's going to have the advantage. We did see Maki Pitolo put McConico in some bad spots. He hurt him a couple times on the feet, but McConico's never been stopped, and he has a good poker face. When he gets hurt, he is dangerous. So when he's on the front foot, he has power. He is good in the pocket with his boxing, and on the outside, he'll mix the kicks in. So he's a decent striker. It's just if you can get him on his heels where he can't kick as easily and kind of maintain distance with feints and get him kind of hesitant, you can beat him up on the feet, but I feel like Ruziboev is going to be looking to use more of that low-volume counter game like he always does. But McConico, he does have a wrestling background, and he's grappled several times for Submission Underground and other grappling shows, so he's actually familiar with performing out here in Oregon. But he hasn't really implemented his wrestling in the cage. He will sometimes crash the distance and push guys against the fence, but you don't usually see him take guys down and submit them as his first option. In this fight, though, I wouldn't be surprised if his game plan is to look for takedowns or at least a lot of clinch control time, because Ruziboev, he's just a really tall, awkward guy to deal with. But McConico, I have seen him taken down, but he's good at exploding and not letting guys control him. And he does a good job fighting in bursts. He tends to explode and then relax and explode and relax, and it makes him fight at a weird rhythm. His conditioning is good. He kind of, I like him. He kind of reminds me of like a more refined version of Cody Steele. And for Nursulton and Ruziboev, kind of intimidating presence in the octagon. He's a powerful knockout puncher. On the feet, he likes to stay planted, ready to counter. Big power in his right hand. He'll throw nice straights, overhand rights. He has nice uppercuts as well. And he's good at staying right at the edge of range, forcing fighters to come to him and then landing with those intercepting counter punches. Flying knees are good. He will mix in some kicks, but I wouldn't say he's the biggest heavy kicker. I do think countering kicks, if McConico does come in with a big heavy kick game plan, is going to be scary for him, because Ruziboev is good at countering those kicks, and that could be a path to victory for him. But Ruziboev, he tends to just be a low-volume guy. If he gets wild and starts blitzing, that's where McConico can land counter hooks. So he just has to be smart. He did get dropped in round 3 versus Buckley. It seems like as he gets more tired, he makes more mistakes and opens up and gets wild. And I think McConico has a chance to take over as the fight goes on. But early on, when Ruziboev's fresh and he's sniping and being sharp and smart and patient, he's going to be dangerous and could get that finish. And the way to beat Nursulton recently, or at least thus far in his career, has been to take him down. But he's improved his takedown defense, and he's always had a good submission game off his back. We've seen him, even versus Buckley, throwing up arm bars and things like that. And Buckley stood up from top position a couple times. So Ruziboev definitely was posing some issues. And early on, like I said, I think he's going to be the faster and sharper striker. I think the front kicks to the body, the counter uppercuts, countering the kicks are going to be what he's going to try to do. And for McConico, I think it's just about smart pressure, forcing Ruziboev to defend clinch attacks, takedown attempts against the fence, looking to land counter hooks, looking to land shots off the break, dirty box. And I think he could take over McConico if he could really push the pace here. Ruziboev slows down, and I think that last fight, it's a great learning lesson for Ruziboev, just because he went the full 15 minutes against a fighter who's top 10 in the world. But 2-7 in decisions, and I find it unlikely he's going to be able to finish a fighter like McConico in round 1. So if you're telling me that, I think McConico is a live underdog, because just his record after the first round is not the best. And McConico has been stopped with strikes in both of his losses, so he's not infallible, but I think this fight's going to be like a fight where it has big moments, but a lot of lulls. I see a lot of staring in the mirror on the feet with kind of one person waiting for the other to make a mistake. And I feel like McConico is going to be the guy going forward. And if he actually can get on top and implement some of that grappling, I think he could really take over the fight. He just has to not fall asleep on top of Ruziboev in his guard. But I just think McConico's smart and durable enough to get out of round one and just get the bigger moments and more control in the fight. Both these guys are super hard to finish, so unless Ruziboev just dies out and gets stopped late, probably going to go to decision. So, yeah, I think Ruziboev in round one has a great chance to win, but after it gets out of the first, McConico has all the value, and I'm going to predict Eric McConico comes in here and wins a decision in his debut as the underdog. And keeping it moving for this next fight, we got Cutelaba taking on Aslan in the light heavyweight division. And this should be fireworks. I mean, both these guys are intense knockout artists. They end fights early a lot of the time. And it's clash of prospect versus veteran here too. Cutelaba, he's been in the UFC for 9 years. He has 18 fights with the promotion. Aslan, he hasn't even been in the UFC for a full year, only 2-0 in the UFC. And Cutelaba, he doesn't have a good UFC record, but he's fought the best of the best. He's only 31. He's coming off a win. He's just trying to find that consistency, whereas Aslan is an absolute unit. The guy has been winning fights, looking good recently. He only has one loss and definitely is confident coming in here. But Aslan, the guy has a nice stance. He's planted. He's ready to counter. He has a good jab to draw out opponent's offense. He'll throw nasty counter hooks, counter overhands. He's accurate. And in the pocket, he's really good at just brawling. I've seen him put guys out cold. His low kicks are super hard. Slick head kicks. He can get kind of wild, but I feel like he's the more powerful and durable guy if these guys just slug this out here. And he's physically strong, so he's decent in the clinch. He'll throw nice elbows on the inside. He'll break off with big punches. And I've seen him get some takedowns in fights. But when he gets on top, he doesn't really do much. He'll just hold guys. His takedown defense is actually pretty good, though. From what I've seen, it seems like he's fairly hard to hold down. Or to take down, But when you do get him on his back, that's where he did see him get submitted by Anton Turkalj. And it seemed like he got really tired after wrestling himself in the first round of that fight. So Cutelaba forced him to grapple is what he has to do here. And Cutelaba looked improved in his last fight. His cardio looked better. He was fighting a little bit smarter on the feet. And he has good pressure. He's good at staying in the pocket, kind of countering with hooks and mixing in the wrestling. I think he has to wrestle in this fight. Aslan is a little sharper, I think a little more powerful. And I expect that Ewan struggles on the feet with the counters. Ewan, if he could force the wrestling exchanges, like I said, hopefully he could gas out Aslan if you're an Ewan backer. And Aslan, his cardio is very questionable. So even though Ewan isn't necessarily known as a cardio guy, I think he probably has the edge there. If he could time some double legs, get on top, his ground and pound is really good. He's been able to mat return guys and kind of just dominate them. We all remember that 1080 had against Justin Jacoby to make that fight a draw. It's kind of weird saying Cutelaba needs to use his cardio to win a fight, but this one I think he can do that. And we've seen him go out there and out-wrestle guys like Devin Clark for 3 rounds. So Aslan needs to have his defensive wrestling on point, and if he does, I think he's going to get a knockout here, or at least a decision win. Ewan needs to either land hard early and knock Aslan out, which I see is a little unlikely, or use his wrestling to gas Aslan. And I just can't trust Ewan's fight IQ. I feel like he's not going to mix it up. He's going to end up getting into a brawl. And I just think Aslan, he's at Tiger Muay Thai, which is a good gym to be at to get a striking sharp for this fight. And I'm going to say he gets a second-round knockout. And closing out the prelims, we got Andre Fili, who's back for his 24th walk to the octagon. And he's a guy that's been a stalwart in the UFC's featherweight division. He's always good for a fun fight. been up and down. He is a gatekeeper, but extremely experienced. He can give a hard fight to anybody, coming off a victory over Cub Swanson, but consistency needs to be what's next because Fili hasn't won 2 fights in a row in 6 years, and this is another opportunity for him to try to find that consistency Saturday, but he's going to be facing Costa, who you could say the same thing about. He's 2-2 so far in 4 UFC fights. He's looked good in his wins, but kind of got dominated in his losses. His last fight, he got that submission victory over Shalia, Nerdy, and Becky, and he's kind of yet to be an established UFC guy, so beating Andre Fili is the key to unlock a big future potentially for Costa in the UFC. And you look at Costa, good blend of striker and grappler. On the feet, he has good kicks, he has good speed, good counter punches. He'll stick and move, he'll attack all parts of the body. He has nasty body kicks, which slow fighters down. Sometimes he can have his hands down, kind of get clipped, but he is good at rolling with shots. He does a good job timing takedowns if fighters come too over aggressive. Good back takes, and he's good at just racking up control time. Steve Garcia, he was able to out-wrestle him for the entire first round, but round 2 he got blitzed and taken out. His last fight, he actually was getting out-wrestled for the large majority of the fight. He was down 2018, but was able to reverse the takedown, get the back, and get the rear naked choke in the 3rd round. I thought it was a bad performance, but he still pulled it out of the fire. And Andre Fili, really good counterpuncher. He's a brawler. If you want to sit in the pocket and exchange with Fili, he finds his punches very well. He's just super dangerous. Nasty counter hooks moving backwards. Nice 1-2s down the pipe. He's fast, sharp. Good job staying long and just touching fighters from the outside. His head kicks are nasty. And on top of that, he has a good double leg, and he will wrestle when you pressure him. His control is serviceable, but more of a guy that has to shoot a lot of times, doesn't have the best control really, but Fili's chin has become a little more suspect recently. He's been in a lot of wars. He's always been known to be durable, but he's gotten knocked out cold a couple times in the last few years. He's been hurt in other fights that he's lost, and you can come over the top of his jab and counter him with big punches. I could see the kicks of Costa being effective too. Fili's wrestling has to be a big part of the game plan here. If he can get the wrestling going, he should be able to shut down Costa from throwing so many kicks and open up his own hands. And I think Fili wins this because he's slightly better overall in the wrestling and grappling, and his boxing is a fairly big advantage there. And I think he has a huge experience edge. It's just possible that he gets chinned at this point in his career. Costa maybe could win some scrambles and keep it close that way. But I feel like Fili's going to win off experience and being able to mix it up with the wrestling. And kicking this card off, we got Alonzo Menifield taking on a short-notice debutant in Julius Walker. And Julius Walker, he's stepping up and taking a huge opportunity full bore here. He's getting into the UFC by accepting this short-notice fight and moving way up in terms of rankings, potentially fighting an opponent who's ranked 15th in the world right away. He's only 6-0. He did just beat Myron Dennis, who, if you know about Myron Dennis, he's one of these guys that a lot of fighters that have made it to the UFC beat him kind of in one of their most recent fights before they got into the UFC. But he also has a win over UFC veteran Bavon Lewis and has beaten a couple good guys, but really unproven overall. He looks athletic, he looks skilled, but he needs to keep accruing that experience, obviously. He's a big fighter for the weight. He has a super long reach. He's fought at heavyweight, and it didn't look like he was like fat or out of shape, even at 250 plus pounds. So he is a big guy. On the feet, he seems decent. He moves around well. It looks like he's fast. When he unloads with punches, it looks like he hits hard too, and his jab looks pretty nice. Good speed with the right hand. But he uses his striking and overall athleticism to wrestle. Good level changes. You'll get big slams. He has decent clinch knees, and he'll use that before he can hit some clinch takedowns, kind of soften you up and then get you to the mat. I wouldn't say he's an elite wrestler, but he's solid for the higher weight divisions. He has been taken down himself, but even if you take him down, he could scramble. His jiu-jitsu looks on point. I've seen him get submissions off of his back. And he has good ground and pounds. He does float his chin and kind of loads up in the pocket with his punches, so he leaves openings to get hit. He has to be more aware of the counters here versus a heavy hitter with experience. He can't be standing in front of Menifield, but he is a dangerous fighter in his own right, and he's one of those fighters that can be losing and then turn it around and finish the fight. So that's always good to see. His conditioning and composure are very good. I think he's going to be in shape for this match because he was already going to be fighting on March 1st in a 5-round title fight. So that kind of alleviates a little bit of the short notice worries. But Alonzo Menifield, he's a powerhouse. He's lost 2 in a row, so he needs a win here at 37 to maintain relevancy, especially versus a debuting fighter. So a lot of pressure on him here. But on the feet, I think he has the advantage. Walker is still learning to strike. I think he leaves openings. Menifield is an elite stand-up guy, but he's explosive. He has solid counter crosses, counter hooks. I think he's going to be hitting harder, and I think he's the better brawler. The fight definitely could be dull on the feet, though, if neither guy engages. But Menifield has had moments where he's blitzed in and got caught against guys like Olberg, but a lot of the times he hangs back with a high guard and might dart in with one strike and then wait to counter. This fight, I expect Menifield to have that game plan because he can't afford to make a mistake and get caught or get taken down. But I think he could probably use his experience to slow the pace, pick the punches better, land heavier strikes if it's pure stand-up fight. The damage that he's taken in his last 2 fights, though, is something you have to take into account. I don't really think Walker has a lot of knockout power, but Menifield being put out like that his last 2 fights is concerning. And Menifield, it's a hard fighter to take down. He's short, stout, he's powerful. Fighters tend to be a bit hesitant to get close to him too because of the power. But if you can put him on his back or against the cage, you can definitely zap his energy. And he has a good sprawl. We saw against Jimmy Crute too. He is able to last in these longer fights and do decently well. He got that guillotine on Jim Crute, so that's something that you have to respect. And on top, Menifield has really good ground and pound. He's really heavy. His conditioning has definitely improved over the years. I think Julius Walker has a bright future, and if he could step up and perform while Alonzo kind of overlooks him, maybe he can get it done here. I get why people are picking him as a popular underdog, but I just think it's a hard ask to fight a guy like Menifield at 6-0. Menifield should be able to land heavy shots on the back foot, and I could see a knockout if Walker really risks it. But I think Menifield will also be content to win a decision, landing single shots. So I think Menifield's either going to win a ho-hum boring decision or get a knockout, depending on if Walker really goes for it or not. And if Walker wants to give himself a chance to win, then I think Menifield's going to get knocked out. Menifield's going to get the knockout. But ultimately, I'm going to say that he kind of realizes early this is not his night, and Menifield wins the decision. And man, I'm looking forward to this one. I think this is a sleeper fight. Anytime Gene Silva's fighting, the fans are going to be pumped, so I guess it's hard to say it's a sleeper, but I think people are sleeping on Melsik Baghdasaryan. I think he's going to make this fight very interesting. I feel like this has the potential to be an all-out war. Definitely fight of the night contender here. Both these fighters are known for their brutal striking styles, and they always produce great fights. Melsik, he's been around for a while, but really struggled with activity. He got on the UFC fans' radar almost 5 years ago at this point. He was on the Contender Series in September of 2020. He actually beat Dennis Bazooka, who has gone on and done fairly well in the UFC now, and he got the win there and then debuted in 2021. He had 2 fights in 21 and went 2-0. Then took 2022 off, had 2 more fights in 2023 where he went 1-1, and then took off 2024 as well. So 2 years he's been in the UFC where he hasn't fought at all, and he is coming off a win, but all that momentum is gone. And he's clearly the B side of this matchup. But the good thing for Melsik is, though, he's getting a huge name right now, someone that's on a lot of fans' radars, and I would say he's one of the most popular unranked fighters in the entire UFC. So if Melsik goes in there and beats him, that 4-1 record with Gene Silva on his resume looks really good. But Gene Silva, he's going back down to 145 after a quick detour to lightweight. He had 3 fights in the UFC last year, 2 at 45s, 1 at 55. His fight with Drew Dober was just a short notice opportunity, so that's why he stepped up in weight for it. and he smashed it, man. I mean, he battered and eventually stopped Drew Dober in that fight, and he's finished all 3 of his UFC fights so far. He's won 11 in a row, and man, I think this is a harder fight that people are giving him credit for. Shout out to him for accepting this fight versus a really credentialed striker like Baghdasaryan without much of a name. And I think this fight's going to be absolutely sick. Gene Silva's a huge favorite just because of recent trends, but Melsik is a hell of a striker. If this fight's a stand-up battle, it's going to be a chess match. Melsik is a former world champion kickboxer. He's very powerful. He's going to be looking to walk down Silva, use feints to draw out Silva, and then use that to open up with his hands. And I think going to the body, the legs is going to be pivotal for Baghdasaryan. Gene Silva, super fast, evasive, creative counterfighter with elite power. Extremely accurate. Even though he doesn't throw a ton of volume, he makes it count. His counter check hooks are nasty. Good counter cross, counter uppercut. On the inside, his elbows are there. And he even will pull fighters in his standing elbows. I think leg kicks for Gene Silva are going to have to be a big part of the game plan here. And I've seen Baghdasaryan get his legs chopped in kickboxing fights, so he needs to be ready to check or counter the leg kicks if they do come. He likes to sit down, throw heavy punches, so the leg kicks are a smart thing to attack versus him. With Silva's ability to switch stance, I also think that the calf kicks will be there for him. With Melsik being southpaw, it doesn't really matter. One thing Gene Silva is a master at that Melsik can't really allow is winning the optics battle, man. It's similar to Merab in a way where Silva uses a lot of antics, gamemanship to show he's in control. And Melsik has to be all business, not buddy-buddy with Silva like Dober was. And I think not allow him to use all those crazy antics. But the clinch is going to be a super danger zone for both because Melsik is an animal there. He throws sick knees, elbows, but Gene Silva has the same weapons and probably even more power. So that's going to be awesome to see. And Melsik Baghdasaryan's wrestling is suspect. He's taken time off again, so we could see it improved, but he got taken down more than once. First Tucker Lutz, he got held down. And Gene Silva, he hasn't even sniffed an attempt of a takedown in his UFC fights, but if there's ever a time to pull some wrestling grappling out the bag, I think it's going to be here. Melsik's one loss, he did get submitted. It was a little unlucky, though. I mean, he slipped, and Josh Caldwell just kind of jumped on his back and choked him out immediately. I actually thought Melsik was winning the fight prior to that, but it shows that Silva, he might be able to capitalize on a moment similar if he can snatch the neck with the front choke or get the back. He might be able to get a submission real quick. If this fight's all stand-up, it's going to be close than the line indicates. I feel like if Silva can't get the knockout, it could get dicey because I could see Melsik maybe winning the first 2 rounds. Man, I mean, I think Melsik's going to win round 1 here at a decent clip. After round 1, I'm a little worried he slows down, though, and you combine that with his age, the injury layoff, and just his inactivity. Silva probably finds a late finish, but man, I think Melsik is a live underdog, and he could show up here and be a parlay buster for some people, but with the physicality advantage, just the trends that these two guys are at, the momentum, I'll say Silva gets a 3rd round TKO. And in the feature bout of the night, we got the ultimate test of veteran experience versus youthfulness and athleticism. We have the 18-fight UFC OG and Rob Font taking on a young, undefeated Gene Matsumoto. And Rob Font, he's fought almost all of the best bantamweights in recent MMA history. He's been in main events. He's earned huge wins. And his last fight, he got his career-saving win against Kyler Phillips. And unless you're the cream of the crop, it's hard to get by Rob Font. And Matsumoto, he's fought Brad Katona, Dan Argueta so far, who are respectable, but they're no Rob Font. He has a lot of experience, 16-0, but this is the best guy he's fought, the biggest moment of his career. And it's a curveball for both guys because Rob Font, he was getting ready to fight Dominic Cruz in his retirement fight, which I'm sure was setting up to being an amazing moment for him, finding another legend and, maybe getting a guy like Dominic Cruz on his resume. But now he's taking on Matsumoto, a young guy that he has to kind of beat to prove that he's still one of the top guys in the promotion and just for his pride. And Matsumoto has everything to gain and nothing to lose here, taking this big step up at 25 years old to try to beat a legend. He was going to fight Chris Gutierrez on March 1st, I believe, or maybe March 11th. Sometime in March for sure, he was going to fight Chris Gutierrez. And obviously, that's a great fighter. It's another striker, but a kicker. So it's a way different matchup than Rob Font. And it's a little bit earlier for Matsumoto as well. So we don't know how he's going to do with the weight cut. It is at 140. So to me, that makes me think that maybe Matsumoto was a little bit heavy here. But they gave him a small allowance of 5 pounds. So we'll see if that helps him out. But man, I don't get this line. I mean, Ralph Font as the underdog to Matsumoto, I thought it would be flipped here. I mean, Gene Matsumoto, he does have the pretty 16-0 record, but he hasn't really beaten any great opponents. You look at a lot of his wins, he's beaten a lot of wrestlers, guys that are more one-dimensional, tried to take him down, couldn't really trade in the pocket with them, and even those guys were landing pretty significantly in portions of the fight. And you watch his last fight with Brad Katona, there was a lot of back and forth in that one where Katona was landing pretty significant strikes. And I just feel like Matsumoto, he's not going to get takedowns and hold Ralph Font down. I've never seen a guy get more shit for one performance than Ralph Font, man. I mean, that guy has one horrible fight versus Corey Sandhagen where he goes and gets wrestled for the entire time, and it's like people act like every other fight in his career didn't happen. Like, we saw Deiveson Figueiredo take this guy down, and Font was able to get up multiple times. His last fight, he got taken down. He was able to get back up, and he's not an easy guy to just hold down and out-wrestle like that. He had a bad night versus Corey, and, it is what it is. But I don't see Matsumoto, who we'd never really see wrestle and grapple for large portions of his fights. I mean, we'll see him get takedowns here and there, but taken down and out wrestling and just putting on a grappling clinic on Font, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to go out here and use his regular Muay Thai style, in the pocket brawler style. And you don't want to do that with Ralph Font, man. I mean, Ralph Font, this guy has insane pressure, elite boxing. He throws in combination. His uppercuts, his jabs are just sick. He has great defense. He'll come with a high guard. He's good at shoulder rolling. He'll kind of mix up the looks that he gives you. He's just a very awkward, experienced, technical, hard guy to fight on the feet. His volume and pressure are insane. And he just won his last fight versus Kyler Phillips. I mean, how much better is Matsumoto than a guy like Kyler Phillips, who's proven that he's pretty close, if not a top 15 bantamweight in the world? And Ralph Font dominated him. The only guys that really have beaten Ralph Font on the feet, it's not like they're beating him and outclassing him. He's winning the majority of the exchanges, the majority of the minutes on the feet in a lot of these fights. And then he just gets rocked and hurt, and it seems like his punch resistance at times isn't the greatest. Even though he's never been knocked out, he always recovers super well because his cardio is just off the charts. He can get rocked and hurt and lose rounds off looking damaged. And Matsumoto is really slick with the counters. So, man, if he does land some sharp shots that rock Font, and, even though he doesn't have the same volume, maybe he could win on points like we've seen other guys do. But are you really comparing him to a Chito Vera, to a Jose Aldo at this point? I think it's a little... I'm not saying he can't win. I'm not saying he won't win. I honestly think Matsumoto's a great talent, but just look at the line, man. I mean, does that make sense to you guys? To me, I don't get that. So, Ralph Font, to me, is going to be the pick. I kind of see this as another Adrian Yanez type of fight for Ralph Font. Not necessarily he's going to knock him out like that, but where he's fraud checking a younger guy that's coming up that everyone's kind of looking at as a future superstar, and Ralph Font just kind of tells him not so fast. So I think Ralph Font's going to get this one done and pull this upset off over Gene Matsumoto. And we got co-main event time between Brendan Allen and Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. This is a rematch between a fight that happened in 2018. That fight was actually 5 rounds for the LFA title. Anthony Hernandez came out victorious that night, and he's the favorite in this matchup here. He's the guy riding the momentum at this point. both guys have been doing really well lately and in the UFC in general, but Brendan Allen had that long win streak snapped his last fight. He had to go over to France. He fought Nasruddin Imavov in his home country, was complaining about some shenanigans with the officials over there in France as well. So just wasn't a great overall experience for him in that fight, and he took the L. And Anthony Hernandez, coming off his first career main event in the UFC, his last time out against Michel Pereira, and did a great job in that one. He struggled a little bit really early, but after that initial kind of trouble, he took over the fight and dominated for the continuance of it. So he's been looking really good, getting finishes on a huge run in the UFC, hasn't lost in years. And you could argue that Brendan Allen has been fighting the stiffer competition, and he was the one that was always a little bit ahead of Anthony Hernandez. And even at this point right now, he's ranked slightly above him. But I think that the line is correct, and Anthony Hernandez is going to go 2-0 on Brendan Allen here. On the feet, it is, in my opinion, slight edge towards Allen. I just don't like fluffy striking. I mean, the guy has a good jab, high volume, straight punches, but very hittable, and eventually that's going to be a problem for him. He does have a great chin and great composure. He could eat shots and kind of play with you in there with your emotions, by taking your biggest punches and acting like he's unfazed by them. But we have seen him get kind of hurt to the body. It's just Brendan Allen, his striking is technical, sharp, but he also is a little bit on the, I think Hernandez is very durable. Brendan Allen is a little bit questionable in terms of his durability to me. And I feel like Brendan Allen isn't as dangerous as some of the recent opponents that Hernandez has fought on the feet that he's been able to handle. So I don't think Allen is going to knock him out or really pose like crazy danger that Hernandez hasn't seen before or can't deal with. And if you watch the first fight, both guys got takedowns on each other, but it was Hernandez who was able to win most of the scrambles and control on top, and Allen was shooting a lot of dumb submissions and losing position because of that, and Hernandez was easily defending them. And ultimately, I do think that Brendan Allen, if he gets on top here and kind of just cements position better and controls, maybe he can upset the apple cart. But trying to beat someone like Anthony Hernandez in a wrestling grappling match for anyone, we're going to start to see him against these higher echelon grapplers coming up, because there's not many more rungs in the ladder for him until he fights the Chimaevs of the world and stuff like that. But I think you're going to be hard-pressed to out-wrestle Hernandez for 99% of guys in the division. And I just think that Allen is going to get out-grappled, out-wrestled, out-positioned again. I think that on the feet he might have the slight advantage, but he's comfortable in the wrestling and the grappling. He's going to engage in that and kind of allow it to be that kind of fight. And I think he will have success. He did hit sweeps, and he was able to get some takedowns on Hernandez the first time they fought, and I feel like he will again. But I just think Hernandez can out-hustle him, outpace him. I don't think a submission or a finish is that likely. I know Hernandez has been taking guys out, but on the feet, I don't see either guy really knocking each other out, and I feel like they're both really good grapplers where it's going to be a lot of positional exchanges and control time for both guys, maybe some ground and pound, but I don't think there's going to be a huge likelihood either of them get each other in a position where they could finish each other, especially in 3 rounds. But I'm going to go with Fluffy to go 2-0 on Brendan Allen. And finally, we got the main event, Henry Cejudo taking on Song Yadong. And if you've been a longtime fan, listen to my videos for a while, I like both these guys. I picked them both. I've gotten big-time cashes and wins with both these guys. And I said a long time ago Song Yadong would be a champion in the UFC. And I'm not sure I'm going to be right with that prediction, because it seems like he's lost some of these key matchups. But, man, if he could beat Henry Cejudo and, have an amazing career, I think it's going to prove me even more right. But Song Yadong is proven to be a really high-level fighter. He's coming off that close loss to Piotr Yan. It's coming in here off of a layoff, and obviously, main event against Henry Cejudo is a very scary fight to take. Not like you're worried about him finishing you or anything, even though he has that capability, but it's just a lot of pressure, a big moment. But Henry, this is the end of the road for him, man. He has to get this win to jumpstart his career again, or it could be the end. Song could send him into retirement if he does lose this one. He is coming off the loss to Merab. He lost the initial comeback fight he had almost 2 years ago at this point against Aljamain Sterling. And once again, had an injury going into the Merab fight that he took time off to heal up after. So he's coming in here off of another long layoff. And it's just, Cejudo looks good still. I'm not saying the guy is washed up, but he's definitely a step below where he used to be. And on the feet, I feel like him and Song Yadong have a very similar style where they both like to throw big right hands. They'll throw leg kicks. Henry might be a little bit more mobile and move around a little bit more, whereas Song is more planted. But I think Song is definitely the more powerful guy, the more durable guy as well. The guy does not even ever get hurt. Neither does Henry, but I think Henry is a little smaller, and if I had to guess who could take a shot better, it's going to be Song for me. And I think Song's just a little bit more dynamic and slick in the stand-up. We saw him fight Ricky Simone, who I'm not comparing him to Henry on the feet, but short, kind of wrestler guy, and Song was able to kind of just beat him up pretty easily. I think Henry's a lot better than that, but you could look at it kind of in a similar way. And I just think Henry, he can get takedowns. I mean, I'm not saying he can't take down Song. I actually guarantee you he'll probably put Song on his back at one point. But is he going to hold him down? I'm just not too sure about that. It's like Henry doesn't have great ability to hold guys down, especially at 135 pounds where he's not the bigger guy like he was at 125. And at 38 years old, to ask someone to come in with a wrestling heavy game plan, that's not the easiest thing. I mean, since Henry's came back from his layoff, he's decided to strike, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think when you get older, you're going to take a path of least resistance and not be, as willing to go in there and wrestle for 25 minutes and have to tax yourself that much. It's easier to go out there and throw punches and kicks and move around and, try to catch that knockout. But I just feel like on the feet, Song is going to be throwing more. He's going to be a little more powerful and just a better striker. That's how I see it. And I feel like Henry may get takedowns, but Song is going to be able to get back up. I don't think Henry's going to do a lot with the takedowns. And I get the line is very wide with Henry at plus 240. It's definitely appetizing, but I just think Song Yadong is going to get the win here. I mean, it's hard to pick a 38-year-old bantamweight on 2 losses, regardless of who those 2 guys are. And especially with the layoff, with the injury, I just feel like Henry, he miscalculated this last portion of his career, and he's going to have to pay for it here with another loss. And I think that Song Yadong is going to get this huge victory on his resume, which is Henry Cejudo, and end up moving on in his career with that big name on his ledger. So give me Song Yadong via decision here. I think he's going to be able to win this one. Maybe 49, 46, 48, 47. I think it'll be competitive, but clear victory for Song. So thanks for watching, guys. That's the full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC Seattle. Hopefully you like this video. Put a like on the video and comment down below. I would really appreciate that. Let's try to get to 100 likes on this video, man. That would be awesome if we could do that. But yeah, as far as my most confident pick on this card, I'm going to go with Mansur Abdul-Malik. For a parlay of the week for this particular card, I would go with the parlay of Modestas Bukauskas and Abdul-Malik. I think that they're both going to get the victories in their fights. So thanks for watching, guys. Go to Patreon.com/PredictionGuru. There's a lot of events going on this week. I think you'll be able to get some valuable content over there. You're going to help the channel. So yeah, man, appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.